You ever seen a man lose his pride without saying a single word? It don't sound like much, I know. A chain, a fence, a well in the middle of a dry Mississippi field. But when you're 9 years old, and all you know is sweat, cracked hands, and the smell of red dirt before rain, that well feels like the center of the world. Welcome to Injustice Browin'. I'm Mark Joie, and if this story moves you, if it sits on your chest, and don't let go, subscribe and leave a comment below. Your voice matters, and you never know who needs to hear it too. Now listen close, because this ain't just about water. This is about what happens when dignity gets locked behind a gate. It was 1961, and Elijah Reed lived on borrowed land, a shack off Route 9, near the edge of a cotton field where the sun didn't just burn it punished. His family were sharecroppers, just like his grandparents before him. No one ever said it out loud, but everybody knew this wasn't freedom. It was just slavery with paperwork. Elijah's daddy worked from sunup to sundown, didn't talk much, didn't complain, but every morning he'd take that long walk to the center of the field, lower the old tin bucket, and pull up clean, cold water from the Reed family well. That well had been dug by Elijah's grandfather, dug deep and proud by hand. It was their life source, their history. Then one afternoon, a truck pulled up, big white Ford, the kind you didn't wave at. Inside was Mr. Charles Braddock, the white man who owned the land they lived on. He didn't bother getting out at first, just sat there, window rolled down, chewing on a toothpick like he was sizing up a mule. Elijah watched from the porch, barefoot, shirt half buttoned, standing beside his mama. She squeezed his shoulder tight, that kind of grip that says don't move and don't speak all at once. When Mr. Braddock finally stepped out, he wasn't angry. He smiled, that cold, polite smile white men used when they were about to ruin something. He walked to the well, pulled out a rusted chain, and began wrapping it around the top, locked it up tight, then turned to Elijah's father and said, just as casual as you'd ask someone for sugar, colored folks need to use their own water. Now, that was it. No argument, no explanation, just turned and walked away. Elijah looked at his father, a strong man, a proud man, the kind of man who made silence feel heavy. But this time, that silence was different. It was hollow. His eyes stayed on the locked well as if he were waiting for it to unlock itself, as if he couldn't believe the world would let a man chain up what already belonged to them. That night, Elijah's mama cried, not loud, just enough for him to hear through the wall. She couldn't boil water, couldn't wash the collards, couldn't even clean the scrapes on her baby's knees, not without begging for it. Pride don't survive long when it's thirsty. And Elijah, he didn't cry. He didn't ask questions. He just sat on the back steps, staring at that field under moonlight, listening to crickets, watching shadows stretch across the land that used to feel like home. He didn't know the word for it yet. Racism, injustice. He was just a boy, but something cracked inside him that night. Not broken, cracked, and in that crack, something started to grow. Something the Braddocks would regret. Something the whole county would feel. In time. Because when you steal water from a child whose hands are still clean, all you're doing is planting rebellion where thirst used to live. And Elijah Reed, he never forgot that chain. There's a kind of betrayal that don't shout. It just stands there, silent, staring you in the face like it never owed you anything. Elijah Reed was 19 now, grown in the body, still quiet in the voice. The kind of young black man who walked like he was trying not to be seen, and thought like he was studying everything in the room, every chalkboard, every face, every lie. He was supposed to be the one. Everybody said it. Elijah's got a mind like a blade. That boy's gonna make it out. Teachers whispered it like prophecy. His mama tucked her hope inside every lunch she packed, every shirt she ironed flat. And the reverend, he stood up in the pulpit, finger in the air, and told the whole congregation, we are sending this young man to college. He's gonna lift us all. And Elijah believed him. He wrote the essays, got the grades, passed the interviews. The letters came in Mississippi State, Jackson College, even one from Howard, up in D.C., the kind of envelope that made people stop and hold their breath before they open it. But then the mail stopped. 1 week, then 2, then a month. Elijah asked around. The Reverend gave a tight-lipped smile and said, things changed, son. The scholarship got redirected, like a train off a broken track. It didn't make sense until someone quietly told Elijah the truth. A white boy from the other side of town had gotten the award, a boy whose daddy owned 3 gas stations and played golf with the mayor. Elijah asked why. Nobody answered. Nobody even looked him in the eye. Not the reverend, not the principal, not even the woman who helped him fill out the forms. Their silence said it all. It wasn't about paperwork, or test scores, or merit. It was about the line you're born behind and whether the world ever lets you cross it. The day he realized he wasn't going to college, Elijah didn't cry. He just walked 5 miles to the courthouse steps and asked for work, anything, sweeping, mopping, carrying boxes. The white man behind the desk raised an eyebrow and muttered something about clean hands and knowing his place. Elijah just nodded, took the broom, started the next morning. And every day for the next 5 years, he swept the floors of that courthouse, polished the railings, emptied the trash in the judge's chambers. The same judge who once chuckled in his father's face over a locked-up well. Elijah remembered that laugh. It had the sting of rusted iron, but he didn't speak on it, didn't show his teeth, just watched, listened, read. When the lawyers threw out old documents, he read them. When they left files open, he memorized names. When they whispered things they thought the black janitor couldn't hear, Elijah wrote it down, every loophole, every trick, every lie dressed up in legal language. And in those quiet hours between sweeping and scrubbing, he started learning how power worked. He watched men in press suits rewrite people's futures with a flick of a pen. Watched white boys with records get off with warnings, while black boys just like him got locked up for less than a dime bag. Watched city land be rezoned and reclaimed, which really just meant stolen. Elijah didn't raise his voice. He didn't march or hold signs. But every day, something in him sharpened. What college tried to keep from him, he took for himself, piece by piece, law by law, paragraph by paragraph, and he remembered. He remembered how it felt when people turned away from him, how the reverend once so proud couldn't even shake his hand now, how it felt to mop the same floor that his dreams once walked across, and under all that silence, something else started to grow, not bitterness, not quiet, but purpose, a cold, steady fire, because Elijah had seen what the system looked like from underneath. And once you've seen that, once you've smelled it, swept it, been spit on by it, you don't forget, you learn, and one day, when nobody's watching, you use it. You ever hear silence so thick, you could feel it pressing on your skin, not the kind that comforts, the kind that warns, that waits. By 1981, Elijah Reed had turned 39, still unmarried, no kids, lived in the same small house with the same rusted screen door his daddy passed up in '67. Folks in town didn't see him much, but when they did, he walked like a man with a secret. That's 'cause he had one, while the world passed him by marriages, church picnics, elections he never got to vote in. Elijah spent his nights with law books, thick, heavy ones, bought secondhand from a used store up in Jackson, some stolen, some gifted, some traded for whatever he had, old records, tools, even eggs. For 20 years, he read statutes by candlelight, practiced arguments to the silence of his room, studied what took everything from his father, and memorized how to take something back. Then one afternoon, the past came knocking. A white Cadillac pulled into his yard, wheels crackling over dry dirt like it didn't belong there, and it didn't. The door opened, and out stepped him, Nathan Braddock, the son of Charles, the boy who once spit near Elijah's feet when he was just a child, now grown, dressed like a preacher and smiling like a wolf. He said he was there on official business, said he was a real estate developer now, said he wanted to build affordable housing units on the back 5 acres of Reed land that had never been sold, land that Elijah's family had bled into for 3 generations. When Elijah asked what made him think he owned any of it, Nathan pulled out a folder, inside a deed, signed, sealed, by Elijah's father. Except Elijah knew that wasn't his father's signature, not even close. It was shaky, clumsy, wrong. His father had beautiful handwriting, taught himself calligraphy while plowing fields, and this mess wasn't it. Besides, his father had been dead 2 years before that paper was dated. Elijah didn't raise his voice, didn't show anger, just told Nathan, "You need to leave now." And that night, he got to work. He filed a counterclaim by himself. No law degree, no help, just him, a black pen, and everything he'd memorized over the decades of being ignored. The courtroom was small. The kind that smells like floor wax and stale coffee. Mostly white faces, a few black ones in the back, watching with arms crossed, unsure what they were about to witness. When Elijah walked in wearing that second-hand gray suit crease just right, collar stiff, shoes shined like Sunday morning, the room fell still. People leaned in, even the judge blinked. Surprised, Elijah stood, cleared his throat, and spoke for 22 minutes. No raised voice, no outbursts, just fact, dates, precedents, violations, point by point. He dismantled Nathan Braddock's story like a puzzle put together wrong. Halfway through, the court reporter paused, had to catch up. The judge leaned forward in his chair, and when Elijah finished, the room didn't clap, but it didn't move either. The judge cleared his throat and, for the first time in Elijah's life, called him Mr. Reed. The court ruled in Braddock's favor on a technicality. They always find one when they need to. Something about clear chain of ownership and insufficient evidence of forgery. But that ain't what folks remembered. What they remembered was a janitor who spoke like a lawyer, a black man in a cheap suit who made a white developer sweat in his shoes, a name Elijah Reed that suddenly meant something different. And after that day, the whisper started. I heard he didn't even finish high school. Man taught himself the law just from reading. You think he might help with my land dispute? Elijah didn't smile, didn't strut, just walked home and shelved the court documents beside his others, his stack of battles. He knew how the game worked, knew that justice didn't always come with a win. Sometimes it came with fear, with people realizing they might not get away with everything anymore. That day, Elijah bled on paper, and though he lost, he also made someone flinch, and in a town built on silence that was louder than any verdict. There's something about quiet people, the way they carry pain like a folded letter in their pocket, unread by the world, but never forgotten. By the early 2000s, Elijah Reed wasn't just a name anymore. He was a presence, a whisper, a man who barely spoke above a prayer, but when he did, people listened. He ran his legal work out of the basement of the old church on Maple Street. The church had long since stopped holding sermons. The roof leaked. The pews were dusty, but the basement cool, dim, quiet. That became Elijah's courtroom. No license hung on the wall, no secretary at the desk, just him, a lamp, stacks of files, and a single table where folks would sit and pour out their lives like spilled water. He never charged, not a dime, wouldn't take money even if you begged. Said the law had already robbed enough from his people. He wasn't gonna join the thieves, and he didn't advertise either. Didn't need to. People came on word alone. A cousin in trouble, a sister evicted, a grandfather whose land was being swallowed by the city, line by invisible line. Elijah would listen, not interrupt, not promise, just listen. Then, when the story was done and the silence returned, he'd take a slow breath and say something like, "Bring me the deed," or "Let me see the citation," or "We'll get this fixed." No theatrics, no lectures, just calm, steady hands that had spent 40 years reading the fine print that was never written for people who looked like him. They started calling him the quiet lawyer, a nickname meant with reverence, not mockery, because what he lacked in paperwork, he made up for in fire, controlled, measured, but burning all the same. He fought landlords who tried to double rent when a black family moved in. He stood beside teenagers arrested for looking out of place on their own streets. He wrote letters that made white city clerks triple-check their paperwork. He found loopholes in places lawyers missed. And through it all, he wore the same dark gray suit every Sunday, polished his shoes to a shine his daddy would have been proud of, sat on the same front porch before the sun rose, drinking the same bitter coffee, reading the same old casebooks he'd been thumbing through since '73. People tried to write articles about him. One reporter from Jackson drove down, asking for interviews. Elijah declined. He said, "Stories ain't what fix things, work is, but truth finds a way." And soon enough, folks started saying his name like it was part of the soil, like the trees whispered it when the wind was low, because behind every case, behind every signature, behind every silent nod in court, was the same boy who watched a well get chained shut, the same boy who watched a reverend turn his back, the same young man who swept the floor while white judges laughed about who mattered. He remembered it all. He didn't need revenge. He didn't need applause. He needed just to slow, deliberate, and earn. There was a power in that dot, not the kind that shouts or flexes or takes up space, but the kind that survives. Elijah Reed became something bigger than just a man. He became a myth, a symbol, proof that no matter how deep they bury you, if you know where to dig, you can find a way to breathe. He didn't do it for fame or for thanks. He did it because the law had always been used to shut black mouths and close black doors. And somehow, he found a way to speak through it, to open doors that had been sealed shut since his grandfather's time. Not with anger, not with violence. But with knowledge. And paper and time. He didn't march. He didn't beg. He just showed up. Every morning. Every week for the ones who were told, "You're not allowed." And slowly, case by case, the system started whispering his name to, not in fear, but in respect. It started as a cough, just a dry scratch in the back of Elijah's throat. Nothing urgent, nothing worth stopping for. But it didn't go away. By the summer of 2016, Elijah Reed was 64 years old, still wore the same suit on Sundays, still sat behind that wooden desk in the church basement, helping anyone who knocked on the door. But his eyes looked heavier now, like they were carrying something more than years. The doctors didn't take long. Stage 4, liver and kidneys, both touched. Environmental, they called it. Long-term exposure. Elijah just nodded. He didn't need them to explain. He already knew. It wasn't just about the well anymore. It never had been. That fence, that chain, that smug voice telling his daddy, colored folks need their own water. That wasn't just hate. That was neglect. That was poison. Decades of illegal dumping from a nearby plant had seeped into the soil. Chemicals nobody tested for, waste nobody reported, and the white family who locked the well never cared enough to check. Not for them, not for the families who drew from that same groundwater every day. Elijah had spent his childhood drinking it, bathing in it, cooking with it. Turns out, the water that gave them life was killing them slow. He never told anybody. Not about the diagnosis, not about the truth. What would have been the point? There was no lawsuit coming. No apology, no headline, just a quiet understanding that this was the final toll, the last debt he'd pay for growing up black on stolen land, in a country that built its foundation on his silence. But still, he didn't stop. He worked through the pain, tapped with shaking hands, filed motions between treatments, answered questions with a soft voice and a mind that never lost its edge. And then, one day, she came. Her name was Mia, young, smart, studying law up in Atlanta, came down on a summer break to help the quiet lawyer for class credit, wore her hair in the same wrap Elijah's mother used to wear when she made okra and cornbread, asked too many questions, took too many notes. He liked her immediately, so he gave her everything, box after box, case files, land records, letters from jails and city halls, faded maps marked with red ink, scribbled margins only he understood. It was all there. His life's work, his fire, passed forward. And on her last day, when she asked him why he never gave up, why he stayed even when it cost him everything, Elijah just smiled, slow and tired, and said one thing: "They buried us. Pause. We were the seed." That was Elijah Reed's final motion, not in court, but in her, and like every seed ever planted in bitter soil, he knew he'd rise again, just not the way they expected. 6 months after Elijah Reed was laid into the ground, after the mourners left and the basement office gathered dust, a letter arrived. No stamp, no return address, just Elijah's name in that same steady script, handed over quietly to the county clerk by a courier who didn't say much. Inside was his final case, a legal challenge, handwritten. Simple, precise, undeniable. Elijah had gone way back to the original land deeds from 1904, and tucked inside the fine print, buried in language meant to confuse, was a flaw, a clerical error, a clause that nullified the Braddock's claim to the Reed family's land. It had been there the whole time, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to read it right. The courthouse tried to bury it, quietly, called it irrelevant, claimed too much time had passed. But Mia picked it up, and she didn't let go. She filed, she argued, she quoted Elijah line by line. And this time the system listened. The land was returned. Not all of it, but enough to matter. And on that land right near the old cotton rows, where the first well once stood, they built another, not chained, not hidden. Clean water, open to anyone. They called it the Reed Well. And folks came, black, white, old, young, not just to drink but to remember. They said his name, not because he shouted, not because he burned buildings, but because he endured, because he fought with paper, with silence, with knowledge, because he never stopped planting seeds. Even when they said nothing would grow, Elijah Reed, the boy they tried to silence, became the voice that outlived them all.